So, Peter, you've written another book, Journey to the Esoteric Circle, Reclaiming Your Cosmic Birthright During the Apocalypse.
Yes, this is my ninth book, and this is my most significant one as I have put everything into this as a culmination of uh, 30 some odd years of teaching from people like Charles Ashenden right there, and Robin Amos, and you, Ted Nottingham. Um, it is a privilege and an honor to be here with you.
You have created a very significant piece, particularly timely. And I'd like to say a few things about the book before entering in dialogue on the themes that it covers. For instance, the fact that you speak to our times now without pulling any punches, really laying it out, the state of Christianity, the state of the human psyche, the good and the not so good of technology, the capitalist gurus on YouTube, all of that in order to cut to the heart of the matter. And I'll be quoting a few things here and there as we seek to explore what it is that you have given us, and we'll see where it takes us. So I'll begin with a quote, if you don't mind. This book you're reading right now has one purpose: to gather up those of us who have ears to hear. So this is for seekers everywhere of all kinds, of all traditions, of no traditions, escaping a Christianity which you have defined as a two-dimensional religion, completely immersed in the ethically based, shallow, outward imitation of right moral behavior. And we know that across the world, in the farthest reaches of this planet, people are hungering for transformational experience, for encounter with the sacred, for that which our Western civilization, which is disintegrating before our very eyes, aggressively seeks to crush: the numinous, the mysterious, the wonder. And you tell us that true spiritual work is done to remember what has been forgotten in the somnambulism of this place we currently inhabit. Yes, you're quite a wordsmith, along with someone who knows what he's talking about. Spiritual work is an act of bravery and sacrifice and longing for our true origins. We're going to unpack all of that in some way or another. And you say up front that we are not trying to put together a patchwork of the common wisdom of all the ages, which is quite an interesting discernment from the eclectic New Age, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's something else. And finally, I want to say, you make the point, this is not a trivial New Age gimmick inspired by a sick society which can be downloaded like some free app on your iPhone. Yes, those quick shortcuts that people love. And so you speak of this esoteric circle. I'm going to give you one more quote and then let you tell us about your sense of what you are referring to. You speak of a spiritual wisdom which has been passed down through the ages and is still accessible. So tell us more.
This is a book that is designed um, for those who are going through a spiritual awakening during this chaotic time, during this time of apocalypse. And the introduction is really focusing on the etymology of the word apocalypse, which really means to uncover, to reveal. It's not about destruction. We are fascinated with destruction. We are fascinated with our own demise. And as we go through this, I found out through the last 32 years of life here as an adult that the church that I had grown up in did not contain the wise men and women who needed to be there to pass on this inner teaching of true Christianity. And what I discovered in as a pastor, I grew up in the United Methodist Church. Uh, I became a United Church of Christ pastor, and I still am. And I still pastor churches. I still preach. I still give communion, baptize, all that. But I have never found anyone in the Protestant church who was able to tell me what this was all about. There was no one there to tell me what Paul meant when he said we need to pray without ceasing. There's no one who taught me about the inner teachings of karma and of resurrection. And there was no one there to teach me about um, changing who I was. And as I discovered in my 20s, I was not just one person. I was a whole lot of people, and I was scattered, and I was legion, as Christ describes that. And there was no one there to tell me this until a guy named Charles Ashton plucked me out of the fire and said, "Stop your daydreaming." Charles Ashton, his pictures right there, and I do a lot of videos about Charles on my YouTube channel. And Charles said, "Stop your daydream. You're wasting your time." But I didn't know what it meant to wake up. And I realized that this inner church that I was longing for was a lifelong learning, this lifelong awakening. And this esoteric journey that we're on is not there's no quick fix to this. In our society, it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, we need a pill, we need an ice bath, or we need a crystal. And within Christianity that Charles taught, true orthodoxy, that there was an inner circle that preceded Christianity, preceded Judaism, and runs all the way through all the major religions. And that's what I call the esoteric circle. It is this perennial teaching, the psychological teaching that really teaches what it means to be spiritual instead of just religious. I was
This is what Gurdjieff would call the conscious circle of humanity, right?
Yes,
And yet
yes,
it is found at the heart of the deepest Christianity, out of the teachings of Mount Athos, which is why
it is, and that was
I wanted to underscore that it's not a patchwork, it's not generic perennial. Ultimately, in the book, you claim Christ as your guide, and
absolutely.
yet it predates. It is beyond that. I want to read
Yeah,
one thing that's quite extraordinary. The way we reconnect with the esoteric circle is to dive deeply into our own individual lives, unpacking and clearing away. And then you use that word, karmic burden,
mm.
if you want to enter that as well.
Yeah, the karmic burden is huge, and that is something which is not taught in seminary. It is not taught at Sunday school. It's not taught from the pulpit, and it's a little known Christian doctrine that it is essential to at least my understanding of what we're doing here. We have inherited karma and we have personal karma. And so much, and this is my own experience, as Rudolf Steiner would say, we're spiritual scientists who have to discover this on our own. And this is a hard fought knowledge that we have that is grace to us. None of it's obtained by reading a book or none of this is all graced to us. But this knowledge that we have about karma is so essential to us because we have to unpack it. We have to unburden ourselves from it. And some of this is inherited from our families through our bloodline. And we have to be able to learn um, how to let go of this And this is the rub. This is where we need to have a we need to have a teacher, and we need to have essentially a group as well. But essentially, we need to have a teacher who's going to be able to help guide us through these stages. One of the things that was amazing about Charles as a kind of an Obi-Wan Kenobi type of a character for me, he never sat down and taught me doctrine. He never sat down and taught me the dogma and what was right belief and what was wrong belief. He allowed me to slowly awaken. We cannot just suddenly just be awakened by a baptism or by a ritual. It's a slow awakening, and the book goes through this sense of awakening, and that we have three stages, don't we? We have awakening, purification, and illumination. And that illumination stage, we want to jump to that, and we want to have a this little pump of dopamine, or we want to have this high, but it takes sacrifice. And Charles had this story of Bishop Anthony Bloom saying that American Christians in particular were great about saying they would do anything for Christ and do anything to be a Christian, but when it came to getting up on that cross, our own Golgotha, that was too much. That was too much to actually say I sacrifice. This esoteric journey is a hard look at who we are, and uh, how splintered and how divided we are. And Robin always said that the goal of this, and I quote this in the book, the goal of all this is to build a coherent psychological structure and return it to God. We have to build what Moravia would call a magnetic center. We have to have a fort. We have to have some kind of outpost where we begin to observe how splintered and how bifurcated we are.
One of the things that I find quite extraordinary is when you make a connection between the second birth, born from above, Christ, Nicodemus, those glorious words, and perhaps this is the first ever, Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. That is quite a unique, original, paradoxical, holistic connection. Tell us some about that and take us into this deep dive into the psyche, into the individual purification process in order to connect with the esoteric circle.
Yeah. Joseph Campbell was one of the original teachers that I had. I was introduced to Joseph Campbell before I met Charles Ashen, and Joseph Campbell continues to be one of my absolute favorites because he universalized Christ for me. He made Christ into this into this universal religion for me, and it made it relevant to me as it connected it with all the other religions. And I realized that there was this thread that ran through all the religions, and Christ was saying the same thing that Buddha was saying, and Moses saying the same thing as Hinduism. It's just this amazing journey, though, that we have to take. And all through mythology, there's this idea that each one of us, each one of us has to make this journey. And this esoteric journey is what this book is about.
And
And
that
as we take
journey,
this journey,
means, to translate it directly into, for instance, fourth way terms or monastic instructions, means inner efforts, use of our free will, objective awareness of ourselves to change, to become
yes,
conscious, the journey into consciousness instead of, as you say, somnambulism. So this hero's journey is that inner effort process. I just want to specify that because that's
yeah,
the beautiful connection.
it is that it's this it is hard work. This is hard work. And what this hard work is you're working on you, because who you are is not who you're supposed to be. You're scattered. And this hero's journey, when you dive deeply into your psyche and you realize how controlled you are by negative emotions, and how as Gurdjieff would say, a splinter in a finger can ruin someone's day. You can be taken off course so easily, and how fragile we are. And that's not returning a coherent psychological structure to God. We have to have something that is solid ground. That the idea of having a firm foundation, not out of sand. You have to have a solid foundation, and you cannot do that the way you are. And it takes effort. It takes huge efforts, massive efforts, and those efforts, it depends on what your cosmic job is, but those efforts, especially meditation, just the fundamental idea of getting up in the middle of the night, or getting up every day in the beginning of every day and meditating, and spending 20 to 30 minutes examining your thoughts, really working hard and saying, what about me? What are some of the things that I could do? And this is one of the things that I do at the end of each day, is I examine my day backwards, and I examine it and try to make sure that whatever I've been through, what have I done wrong? Do I need to correct it? Do I need to say, ask for forgiveness? And examining
And you
that.
know that this is the ancient Eastern Orthodox exercise of the examination of conscience,
Yes.
right out
And
of the tradition, the teachings. I,
it
would-
takes
I do
enormous.
want to say, as you speak of all these big efforts, and yet my my yoke is easy, my burden is light, because ultimately these big efforts of self-understanding, self-purification, cleansing the inside of the cup, leads to that meditative silence being your presence in the moments of your life, living fully your reality outside of illusion and imagination. And therefore, there's something lightness of being, right?
Yes.
Ultimately, it
Yeah, you're cleansing yourself. As Teresa of Avila would say, you're cleansing that mirror that you have been throwing mud on with all of the negative emotions, and you're cleansing that so you see the reflection of Christ, the risen Christ, and you realize that through those efforts you're gaining energy. Gurdjieff talks about these fine hydrogen, this 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 element of the energy that we gain through these efforts. No effort on the way is ever discarded. It's all of this all it's all about this accumulation of
Mhm.
of this energy that we need in order to have this solid foundation, so we can return something to God. When my body passes, when I die, I need to have something that is permanent. We're after a sense of permanence. We're after something that is going to last after this frail grass-like body goes.
So
What happens?
you mentioned Teresa of Avila. Her friend Saint John of the Cross says we must clean the window to let the light of the divine come into us. And what you are saying, what you say in the book, is this inner divinity emerging.
Yes.
This,
And
so
that's one
that's
of
the
the things I
permanence.
love. I love that's about Orthodoxy, is it as opposed to Catholicism and Protestantism, have nothing. Orthodoxy, and Charles introduced this to me, this idea of theosis. Theosis is such an important part of this whole belief system, because it means, with a little g, we are invited to become God, and not with this large G, small G. We are asked not to be an imitation of Christ, but we are asked to be our own version of Christ in this world. But we can't do that
Yes.
unless we make these efforts.
As he said, I am the first fruit of many. He
Yes.
himself calls us to this. And this, of course, is entirely different than the narcissistic madness that is found in superficial New Age thought that we are the greater the universe. That's insane. And yet we are one, as quantum physics points to.
Yes.
And we cannot be that with our little selfish personality, our distractions, our irritability, all of that needs to be cleansed. I'd like to quote the moment when you give us a very specific definition of this esoteric circle, and then let's go into from this personal inner work that must be done in order to connect with what you're calling the esoteric circle. So you define it as the esoteric circle is a protective, singularly focused clan of Homo sapiens whose cosmic job is to assist in the preservation of the psychological teachings of true humanity. I'll take it one more step. These teachings are designed to delicately lead individual humans out of their feral condition, teaching each of them the art of releasing personal and inherited karma and being twice born into its permanent, deified state of salvation. Esoteric circle is not merely other humans who share this common bond, this anam cara, this soul companionship, soul friendship, this same hunger and thirst for righteousness, for real being. It is also something from above coming to us that is available to us, is it not?
Yes. Charles had a term for it. He called it co-penetration. And this is this idea that we have beings from other worlds actually coexist with us and our psyche. And it may be a grandfather, it may be a guardian angel, maybe what some other deified being that's under the the E influence or D influence. But there is much more to this world than what we can see. And our five senses and living in this body prevents us from seeing that and experiencing that. And In Search of the Miraculous is aptly named because that's really what we're after. We're after this miraculous experience of the now, of God with us now, Emmanuel. We're after that now. We're not going to wait. And I'm not going to be told by a church, or I'm not going to be told by a wrong doctrine or dogma that I'm not a child of God, that I don't have a birthright. I am going to claim that birthright and say, you know what? I've been sent here. We've all been sent here for a purpose, and I'm going to discover that purpose now in the midst of the apocalypse. And I'm going to claim that birthright because I am a child of light. And no matter what has happened to you in your life, especially with the church, how abusive the church can be in so many levels, no matter what, God still loves you and God still wants to claim that you are a child of light and that you're not done and you have meaning and purpose, regardless of what has happened to you. And that's really the message, to say there are others out there. You are not alone. And that really is the point, because I felt that way for a long time. I felt like I was the only one, and you're not the only one.
Yes. And all the more so in these apocalyptic times, however we understand them. Certainly we see what's happening, climate change, economic instability, on and on. The internet that could in an instant disappear from a solar flare too large, right? The electromagnetic event. And I was quite taken by the fact that what you are describing parallels what I tried to share in my two novels, the one foretold, right? The desolation, how to survive in these impossible times, these dramatic times, these catastrophic times, by precisely doing this inner work that makes us people of peace, and as you say specifically, that have something to carry on for the next generation, something of the wisdom of the ages that is not lost with everything else that may be lost. And that is quite intriguing right there. And I want to make this quote here, state this quote here. Our main interest is this: how will the esoteric circle remain unbroken? But more importantly, the question is, are you ready to stand in this esoteric circle as the world burns and drowns at the same time? And I want to bring up, before I forget, you make the point several times, the Bible, the scriptures, the teachings, etc., tell us about what we can become, but not how, not the specifics, which are precisely what take us into this esoteric connection, companionship, which is why we have to dig down deep and free ourselves. Tell me more about karmic burden. Are you talking about past lives that we carry with us as well?
Yeah, Charles called it pre-existence. He never would really say reincarnation. So there's a difference there. But the common denominator in all this is that we're not cosmically, spiritually, we're not from here. That that birthright, that spark of God, however you want to look at logos, we are born with that, and that is eternal. And we are working and striving to return that, but we have to rid ourselves of what we have inherited genetically through our family line, also in our life. And that cross is the perfect symbol of the shedding of the karma. And that is the thing that must die. We must die to our old self. That's very Jungian, but we have to die to that old self. We have to allow for that past to die. And
And this
so
includes
much of the
this
stuff that I,
includes trauma, right? Our traumas.
you know, and you will understand this as well. Much of the stuff, this is my ninth book, but much of the books that I've written are really just all about me getting rid of the karma. I was almost pursued by another pastor who was really narcissistic and brutal to me and really tried to destroy me. And for 30 years, that really bothered me. Like, why was he so mean to me? And I had to really dive deep and say, what was me? What was Larry? What was me? What was Larry? And I had to figure out, as Robin would say, in the thoughts in my head, what are my thoughts and what are not my thoughts? What are the thoughts that are coming from other realms? What are the other thoughts that are not mine? What are mine? What's me? And you have to sort through this, and especially with the trauma that we have experienced. When you've experienced trauma, whether it's psychological, sexual, physical, those scars are deep, and you have to be able to rise above that and be healed from that. And you've spoken about this in many of your sermons, but you know, we need to be able to have our past healed in order to move on. And how do you do that? That's the how, and that's why you need a teacher. And that's why you need someone there with you. That's why you need to get connected with this other side and begin to listen on a different level. Because as Charles Ashton would say, prayer is about listening. It's not about speaking. It's developing this inner psychological way of listening to what is going on instead of just talking and spending your whole life saying words, but having them mean nothing. That's what I've learned that most of my life has been. I want to be silent. I want to be able to learn how to listen.
I want to identify a very specific how, which of course ties right into the watch of the heart, self-observation of fourth way, etc. And that is your statement, Your attention is your only tool on this inward journey.
That's it. Attention is it. It's the only thing that you actually have that's yours. You have your attention. Attention on what? When many people sit there and say, I want to learn how to meditate, and you sit down, you try and calm your mind, you say a prayer, but within a few seconds you're daydreaming or you're asleep. And when you turn inward, that what's that sense of metanoia, that turning inward, and you try to accomplish hesychasm, that silence, you realize that you're just scattered. You have no stability. And using the Jesus prayer as a almost like a weapon. I mean, it really is. It's a shield. I don't know. Paul talks about that in Ephesians 6. Using the Jesus prayer to say, bring back the attention, bring back the attention, bring it back. And creating that over and over and over, that stillness, so that you can use that during the day, when you can use the Jesus prayer. Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner, has been the most crucial tool that I have in my
You know that
toolbox, as they say.
Saint Theophan the Recluse points out that this is an example of divided attention, consciousness of the mercy of the Holy One, awareness of our need and dependence. So we invoke it into our need. And of course, for the Gurdjieff student, this divided attention is a crucial, practical piece of information on the path to objective consciousness about oneself, to a new way to relate to reality, etc. You quote another wonderful Holy Father, one of the greatest, Saint Isaac the Syrian. And that by itself is a gift in this book. What is repentance? Abandoning what has been.
I love that quote. Absolutely love it. And it speaks to maybe someone who's listening, who you things have happened in your life. It is okay to just say it's over and move on. And there's that story of those two monks in the book. Um, and it's just this beautiful idea that you can just leave it, just move on, move
Just
on.
just like the word forgiveness comes to us from the Greek, literally means put the baggage down.
I mean, you can, when I was growing up, I used to go to the altar in the Methodist church and say, "Lord, take this burden from me." And I get it. There's nothing wrong with that. But the thing that drove me nuts about being in the church was nobody could tell me how to do it. And it's taken a lifetime for me to sit there over and over again. Let this go, let this go. And sometimes I struggle with some of these burdens, and I just have to realize that I need to stop returning to the vomit. I need to stop returning to that and just let it go and be able to move on. And um, there's so much that we have to do, so much activity going on around us in this world of ours. There's so much going on in terms of chaos. And there has to be a group of us that bind together. Gurdjieff said there only needs to be 200 enlightened people. There has to be a group of us that are saying this is salvageable, that humanity is salvageable, that this creation is salvageable.
So let me
Because
pick
we're in
up
a
on that. Let me pick up on that. First of all, the simplicity of it. You say, how do you stay in this moment in order to escape the bonds of the past and the present? How? The key is to learn how to stay tuned to the moment, which is, of course, a universal teaching. But to what you just said, so esoteric circle, secret school established to educate those who have ears to hear, but it's something else. Are you ready to be among the ones who will preserve this ancient wisdom for the next generation so that humanity can rebuild itself, learning again how to coexist with the natural world as well as the holy presence of God within our collective psyches? So it is a call. Are you willing to be a part of this secret school? So it is ultimately for the welfare of humanity, not merely our own survival.
Absolutely. It's the preservation. And what an amazing time to be alive. To be here at this cataclysmic time. It's just, to me, for a long time it was terrifying, because I have since climate change, I have since all this stuff for years, and it's haunted me. And now it's beginning to make sense, because now I've accepted it, and we're right in the middle of it, and I love it, because we're right here in this. There's no better time to be alive than right now, because
Because what is
now
the paradox here?
it's this accumulation of these few people that are going to preserve this teaching as the world goes into barbaric chaos. Ouspensky talks about this in Esotericism and Modern Thought, this essay in A New Model of the Universe. And he says it is a natural swing, it's a natural cycle for civilizations to rise and to fall, to rise and to fall. It's nothing out of the ordinary. For to What is happening is not out of the ordinary.
Yes.
It's a normal part of it.
You
So
you
what we
you
are
you
experiencing.
remind me
Mhm.
of Gurdjieff saying that the good thing about when things are dark is that the ray of light coming through can be seen better and can be
Yeah.
taken by those who can receive it in a way that may be less possible at another time. So that's what you're saying in this paradoxical, because
Yes.
obviously nobody's happy about the catastrophes around us. What you
Absolutely
find
not.
exciting is the fact that that there's this emergence of urgent relationship to these spiritual ideas of becoming, of true becoming,
There's
true
something
growth.
there's something new being born.
Okay, there you go. That's it right there.
Something new is being born. Something new. And I don't know what that is, but I want to be a part of it. And I want to be able to help accumulate what is already happened. And I want to be a part of that.
So
And
it has to
I'm
be
called to be a,
asked. So how do people become part of it? What do lost,
you,
lonely seekers do to connect
right?
to that which is called esoteric circle?
We are things start to happen to you once you get on this path. You begin to meet people. Not many of them, but you begin to meet people. You begin to get books. You begin to get ideas, and you begin to realize that you need to work on yourself. And the most important thing that you can do is to meditate and to develop an inner life and to seek a development uh, of peace within you, so that you can listen, so that you can discern who the people are that you should be around, who's the right teacher, because there are a lot of people out there who are saying, similar things, but are charlatans. And not everybody who's wearing a robe, or not everybody who's in the church, is holy. And there are many evil people within these church structures. And some of the meanest people I've ever met are pastors, and they're some of them are horrible people. And for whatever reason, they're attracted to this. But you have to be able to discern this. You have to be able to figure out who do I need to be around. And when I met Charles Ashton, I met Charles at the same time I met this guy named Pastor Larry. I knew the difference. I wanted to be around Charles. When I met Charles, it was like there was a recognition, there was a remembrance, and that's a big term in Fourth Way and in Orthodoxy. Remembrance, recognition. This idea that I recognize you. I mean, there was something familiar about
Mhm.
Charles. And that's where when we talk about karma, you begin to sit there and think, I remember you.
Mhm.
There's something
And
familiar about you.
yeah, and as you said, things begin to happen. You will recall, of course, that it was at Charles's funeral that I mentioned to you this group in Chicago connected to Robin Amos, and that was your entry into what, a decade plus with him. So from the even at the death of
Yeah,
Charles, there was another door that opened directly
exactly.
out
And
of that.
I'll know, you know, you and I were pallbearers for Charles. With, remember that coffin that had no handles, so we had to get underneath it. And afterward, um, yeah, I just remember you were, it was like you were 10 feet tall in my memory. There, it was an amazing experience. And I remember you saying to me, I know someone in Chicago. I hear you're living in Chicago. And I was living there. And you said, I've got someone you might want to meet. And you gave me the phone number. And it was like I met, his name was Bernie Edwards, and I met him at a coffee shop by the old school town of folk music. And it was like I was a CIA agent or something. And I was just at the secret meeting, you know, and I was like kind of looking around, like, you know, has anyone spotted us? And it was huge. And that's what's going to happen. But you have to make these first step, and that's where the Joseph Campbell stuff takes brings us. You have to make that first step into the wilderness where there is no path. And are you willing to risk leaving everything that you've known, the comfort of the psychological comfort of home, where everything is neat and tidy, you know, that God loves you and God forgives you and all these things that you think you know, going into the wilderness and realizing that I'm alone. Are you willing to do that for a while? Because eventually you'll meet people like Charles and Ted, and Robin Amos, and Lillian Delavorius. You know, you'll meet people like this, and you just have to be patient, and you have to take one step into that wilderness. And that's the hero's journey. And not many people want to do that.
You say at one point to set out on the way, that wilderness you just mentioned, we must necessarily go through an inner collapse of the personality, similar to your Golgotha, right? The but one has to be willing to be shattered to get out of the pride, out of the illusions, to enter that radical humility that is the baseline of authentic spirituality. So it is
Yeah,
a
Moraviev called it moral bankruptcy. And you get to the point where you just say, I know nothing. I know nothing. I know nothing. Lead me, teach me, do with me as you will. That's been one of my prayers. Lord, do with me as you will. That has been a prayer that I've had for 30 years. Do with me as you will. Lead me. Let me be useful. I want to be worthy of my hire. You know,
I would have
we're
yeah,
given a cos. I
I
want to
would
be a, I have a cosmic job. I got to do my job. What is it? I'll do it.
would
Let me
I would
go.
attach to that beautiful saying, which is very Thomas Mertonish, right? I don't know where I'm going, but I think that the desire to please you does in fact please you. So lead
Yes.
me, right? All of that
Yes.
ultimately is abandonment to the divine providence.
Absolutely. This is mystical. This is a mystical journey, and you have to just jump into it. Jump into it and realize that when you can't see the way, by jumping into the void, into the darkness, it that jumping actually creates a path in front of you. That you actually create the way, which is the original name of Christianity. You create the way, the path, by jumping into the void. And when you think there's nothing there, this is insane. Why would you go any further? Stay with what you know. No, jump into nothing. And in doing that, you actually create space. And to me, that has happened so many times in my life where this abandonment, just, Lord, I'm just going to do it. It doesn't make any sense financially. It doesn't make any sense spiritually. It doesn't make any sense, with my career. But just jumping out, I've moved to Chicago without a job. I've quit. I bought a house without a job. There's just these things where I I just was I just said, Lord, lead me on. And this relationship that you have with God and with the other side reacts to you. And you begin to have this reaction from unseen entities that are around you. And they've always been around you. But you have to leap into it as the hero. You have to leap into it and say, I'm going to act. And in doing so, you create something that's not there.
You mentioned the term oubliette, right? I don't know
Mm.
whether is that from Muraviev, perhaps. Oubliette
Yes.
is a term I've known since first grade, because
Mm.
in French history, Louis the XI, the Spider King, would put his poor victims into these deep, lost places. Oubliette from the French verb oublier, to forget, where people are forgotten. It is ultimate desolation. And so there is something of ultimate desolation in a world where there is no God, there is no sacred, there is no wonder. As you know so well, the Gnostics assumed that was this world. And you have in some ways said that, in my view, that can't be right because there's too much beauty, you know? Eternity in a grain of sand type of thing. And yet at the same time, in the midst of that divine grace visible to us, there is the devastation of psychic barrenness that is a prison, if you would. But in any case, in this, quote, true personality, after having been fully developed here within the oubliette, will return as a healthy cell to the body of the One and participate in the overall goal of the Heavenly Father, which I shall now state in your words: a total transformation of all of creation into an expression of pure love, the energy of the ages which sustains all life of the cosmos. This is the goal of the esoteric circle. That's big. That's huge. We better have help from above, right? But what a
Right, right.
glorious thing to individually, in our loneliness, go into that wilderness, that dark wood, like Dante, lost and alone, only to discover that when we make connection on the other side, we are connected to something this big, this huge, with one, two, three, a dozen brothers and sisters, real family, spiritual family, working here for the divine. And that is more evident now than ever because of these apocalyptic times, as you're pointing out. And that's why you say there is reason to be excited about these frightening times. And I want to read two more pieces that complete your book. This is the resurrection, this rebirth within each moment of your earthly existence. You recall the movie that I created, The Resurrected Life. I love that way to see it and what Charles had to say about that. The resurrected life, you call it this rebirth within each moment of your earthly existence. The accumulation of energy throughout this process of rebirth is the energy you need to acquire permanence or theosis. And then the writer comes out. Then the secrets whispered to the angels will reach you, and you will have the ears with which to hear. May this be great hope for whoever hears this, whoever finds your book on audiobook or Kindle or Amazon, and realize what this represents, what this this call. You've named it several times in the book. This is a call. Hey, you out there in the desert, in the wilderness, you're not alone. Join us. And in that usness, something extraordinary will manifest, even in the middle of the catastrophe. You say this is the most important book you've written.
Yes.
What urged you to do it? What got you focused here?
I needed to share what has been given to me. And I could not go on without sharing what has been given. I can't I can't hold it. I can't hold it. And I want to give hope to those people who out there right now who need to hear that they're not alone, and that there is this calling that you have been hearing is real, and that there's an inner church, and it's out there, and it's deeper than the outer church. And no matter what has happened to you, there's a group out there,
There are
and
companions
there's
on
a
the way.
specific teacher for you. There are companions on the way. Well, the YouTube channel that I started at the beginning of the pandemic was really about that, this accumulation, this gathering up of people who are scattered, who need to hear that they're not alone. I needed to hear that. I had Charles. Where would I have been without Charles? Where would I have been without Rob? I needed people out there, and I need to be that for someone. You need to be that for someone. We all need to share this, and because without sharing it, we kill it. That's my big sin. My big sin is by holding on to this and not sharing and not saying this is. There's no time to be afraid. There's no time to be afraid right now in this world. We have to gather up. We have to gather up the knowledge, the wisdom, and we need to gather up the people. And we need those of us who have ears to hear. We have to work hard, and we have to work diligently. We have to work until we our time is done. We don't know when that time is up, and we have to work. That was the one of the characteristics that Charles and Robin had: diligent workers, constantly working at this, never really, never really putting that guard down. Where they were just nepsis, they were alert constantly, and I want to be like that.
And so little groups here and there, even not connected with each other, form the esoteric circle.
Yes.
Because
And what Teilhard de Chardin said: everything that rises must converge. Hmm. Everything that rises must converge. We if we are all doing this separately, then we're communicating with one another. There's so much going on. There's so much going on past my five senses, and I want to develop those characteristics. Charles was clairvoyant. I mean, we're called to develop these psychological characteristics of the saints. We're all called to do this.
even as civilization crumbles under our feet and all the values and traditions disappear here, going the other way, against the current, full
Yes.
of hope and certainty.
And we dive inwardly on this hero's journey because we have compassion for a world that is suffering.
Amen. May your book reach those who can receive, who have ears to hear.